Have you ever wondered how hidden forces might have influenced one of the darkest periods in modern history? What lies behind the coincidences and conspiracy theories? Today, we will explore occultism in World War II, a topic that holds secrets capable of transforming our understanding of this global conflict. What led Nazi leaders to become deeply involved in rituals and esoteric practices? How did communication with extraterrestrial entities and macabre human experiments play a role during this period? Prepare for a journey of discoveries that will unveil mysteries, scandals, and surprising revelations. Do these practices still echo today? Keep watching to uncover how occultism and forces beyond our comprehension have influenced history. Have you ever imagined that the interest in occultism within the Third Reich was not an isolated or merely decorative phenomenon? This interest was deeply rooted in the mentality and objectives of Nazi leaders. Adolf Hitler, Heinrich Himmler, and other high-ranking party officials were immersed in esoteric beliefs and worldviews that transcended politics and conventional warfare. Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, was one of the main architects of the infiltration of occultism into Nazi ideology. Born in 1900, Himmler had an early interest in history and mysticism. The creation of the Ahnenerbe, Society for the Research and Teaching on Ancestral German Heritage, in 1935 was a reflection of this interest. The Ahnenerbe aimed to study and promote the supposed cultural and racial legacy of the ancient Aryans, seeking evidence to reinforce the idea of a superior race. The expeditions sponsored by the Ahnenerbe were not merely academic. In 1938, an expedition to Tibet, led by Ernst Schäfer, was organized to find connections between Aryan civilizations and ancient Eastern cultures. The Nazis were particularly interested in Shambhala and Agartha, mythical realms that, according to some esoteric traditions, held advanced knowledge and technologies. Wavelsburg Castle, acquired by Himmler in 1934, became the spiritual center of the SS. Himmler planned to transform it into an Aryan cult center, where rituals and esoteric ceremonies would be performed to strengthen the Nazi elite. The Hall of Generals, Obergruppenführersaal, was designed in the shape of a black sun, an esoteric symbol associated with supremacy and occult power. Adolf Hitler, the supreme leader of the Third Reich, was also deeply influenced by esoteric ideas. He was strongly influenced by figures like Dietrich Eckart, one of the founders of the Nazi Party and a practitioner of occult practices. Eckart believed that Hitler was the Messiah destined to lead Germany to greatness. Under Eckart's influence, Hitler became interested in astrology, numerology, and Germanic mythology. Hitler firmly believed in destiny and the power of symbolism. He saw the swastika as a powerful amulet that could channel the spiritual energy of the Aryan race. The architecture of Nazi rallies, such as those held in Nuremberg, was carefully designed to evoke an atmosphere of grandeur and mysticism, with parades and ceremonies reminiscent of ancient rituals. Another organization influential in the development of Nazi occultism was the Thule Society, an esoteric group that promoted racist and anti-Semitic ideas. Founded in 1918, the Thule Society believed in the existence of a pure Aryan race, descended from a lost civilization that inhabited the mythical island of Thule in the North Atlantic. Many founding members of the Nazi Party, including Rudolf Hess, were members of the Thule Society. The organization used esoteric symbols and rituals to strengthen Aryan identity and promote racial superiority. The Thule Society was also instrumental in spreading conspiracy theories and racial myths that deeply influenced Nazi ideology. Nazi occultism was not just a facade. It directly influenced policy formation and the conduct of the war. Esoteric beliefs fueled the vision of a grand and inevitable destiny for Germany, justifying atrocities in the name of a supposed greater good. This deep immersion in occultism shaped the collective psyche of the regime and provided fertile ground for ideological radicalization, creating a Nazi elite that viewed war and genocide as necessary steps to achieve Aryan supremacy. Have you ever wondered why the Nazis adopted so many esoteric rituals and symbols? The Nazi rituals and occult practices were developed to create an aura of mystical power around the regime, and to instill a sense of divine mission among its members. These rituals were not merely symbolic. They were intended to channel energies and supernatural forces that Nazi leaders believed were available to the Aryans. The SS, under Himmler's leadership, adopted a series of rituals inspired by esoteric and pagan traditions. The SS Oath of Loyalty was one of the most important rituals, conducted at altars decorated with mystical symbols like the Sig rune, which represented victory. These rituals were designed to spiritually bind SS members, creating an almost religious bond between them and the Third Reich. SS members underwent a rigorous initiation process, which included nighttime ceremonies held in sacred places, such as forests and mountains. These rituals were inspired by ancient Germanic and Nordic practices aimed at invoking the protection and blessing of Aryan ancestors. Himmler believed that these ceremonies could channel spiritual energies that would strengthen the SS and ensure its supremacy. Marriage and baptism ceremonies in the SS were also reformed to reflect Nazi ideology. Weddings, for instance, were conducted at Aryan altars, and children were baptized in ceremonies celebrating their racial purity. These practices aimed to replace Christian traditions with a new Nazi paganism that glorified the Aryan race and its supposed ancestors. Marriages were held in sacred places and involved complex rituals, including the exchange of vows in front of Aryan symbols and the invocation of blessings from Germanic gods. These ceremonies were not merely symbolic, but also served to reinforce loyalty to the SS and the Third Reich. In addition to rituals, the Nazis used a variety of esoteric symbols to reinforce their ideology. The swastika, originating from ancient Indo-European cultures, was adopted as a symbol of power and racial purity. Other runes, such as the Odal rune, symbolizing heritage and ancestry, were widely used in insignia and decoration. Hitler believed the swastika had a magical power that could protect Germany and ensure its victory. This symbol was integrated into flags, uniforms, and architecture, becoming an icon of the Nazi regime. Another important esoteric symbol was the Black Sun, a mystical symbol associated with occultism and Aryan supremacy. The Black Sun was a central element in Wewelsburg Castle, where Himmler conducted many of his rituals. It was believed that the Black Sun had the power to channel cosmic energies and confer a supernatural power to SS members. Reports suggest that these rituals included meditation, chants, and symbolic sacrifices designed to invoke the powers of the Black Sun and strengthen the participants' spiritual connection to their Aryan ancestors. These esoteric practices were not limited to symbolism and public rituals. They permeated the daily lives of party and SS members, shaping their perceptions and actions. The belief in racial superiority and the divine destiny of the Aryans justified brutality and violence. This mentality justified genocides and atrocities as necessary steps for the realization of a grand cosmic plan. The horrors of Nazi concentration camps are well documented, but less known is the esoteric and pseudoscientific dimension of the human experiments conducted there. Driven by their beliefs in Aryan supremacy and racial science, the Nazis performed inhumane experiments on prisoners, aiming to explore the limits of the human body and validate their racial theories. Josef Mengele, the Angel of Death of Auschwitz, was one of the main perpetrators of these atrocities. Fascinated by twins, Mengele conducted grotesque experiments to understand heredity and attempt to improve the Aryan race. His victims were subjected to injections of chemical substances into their eyes, amputations without anesthesia, and dissections while still alive. Mengele believed that twins held genetic secrets that could be exploited to promote racial purity. His experiments included attempts to alter eye color by injecting pigments directly into the irises, causing excruciating pain and blindness. Mengele also performed surgeries without anesthesia to study the internal organs of twins, often resulting in agonizing deaths. Another grim aspect of these experiments was the use of prisoners to test human endurance limits. At Dachau, Prisoners were submerged in ice-cold water tanks to study the effects of hypothermia. These experiments aimed to find ways to help German pilots and soldiers survive extreme conditions, but were conducted with total disregard for human life. Prisoners subjected to these experiments endured terrible pain as their bodies gradually froze. Some were placed in ice-cold water tanks for hours, while others were exposed to extremely low temperatures without adequate protection. Many died from shock or organ failure, while Nazi scientists coldly observed and recorded the results. The Nazis also explored esoteric practices in concentration camps. In their quest for superhuman abilities, they conducted experiments involving sensory deprivation, forced meditation and hypnosis on prisoners, believing they could unlock latent powers in the human mind. These experiments reflect a macabre fusion of science and occultism, where the quest for transcendental knowledge justified any cruelty. Prisoners subjected to sensory deprivation were kept in total isolation, without light or sound for extended periods. The Nazis believed this could induce altered states of consciousness, allowing the exploration of psychic abilities. Hypnosis experiments were conducted to try to control prisoners' minds, forcing them to execute orders against their will. In addition to esoteric practices, the Nazis conducted brutal experiments with radiation and infectious diseases. Prisoners were deliberately infected with typhus, malaria, and other diseases to study the effects and develop vaccines. Others were exposed to high doses of radiation to observe the damage caused to the human body. These experiments were carried out without any ethical consideration, resulting in extreme suffering and painful deaths. Prisoners were treated as mere study objects, deprived of any dignity or humanity. The cruelty and brutality of these practices reflect the Nazis' absolute disregard for human life. The esoteric dimension of these experiments is an often neglected but essential aspect to understand the complete dehumanization promoted by the Nazi regime. The combination of science and occultism created a scenario where the exploitation and torture of human beings were justified in the name of supposed racial and spiritual advancement. This meticulously planned horror reveals an even more disturbing facet of the Nazi mindset, which saw prisoners not only as political enemies, but as spiritual obstacles to be overcome. Have you ever thought about the possibility that the Nazis attempted to communicate with extraterrestrial entities? Among the various facets of Nazi occultism, this is one of the most controversial and fascinating. Esoteric groups within the Third Reich, such as the Vril Society and the Thule Society, believed that advanced civilizations existed on other planets and could provide superior knowledge and technology. The Vril Society in particular was obsessed with the idea of a cosmic energy called Vril. They believed that this energy could be harnessed for both spiritual and technological purposes. Some theories suggest that members of the Vril Society conducted channeling sessions, attempting to establish contact with beings from other worlds to obtain instructions and guidance. It was believed that Vril energy could be used to develop advanced technologies and grant supernatural powers. Members of the Vril Society practiced meditation and concentration techniques to try to access this energy and receive messages from extraterrestrial entities. These contacts supposedly provided knowledge that could be used to create revolutionary weapons and machines. Post-war documents and testimonies mention experimental aircraft, such as the Haunebu and the V-7, which were allegedly developed based on information acquired through these communications. These experimental flying discs, if real, would represent a technological advancement far beyond the capabilities of the time. Although many of these accounts remain in the realm of speculation, they contribute to the myth of Nazi occultism and its relentless quest for absolute power. Nazi flying disc projects included the development of disc-shaped aircraft capable of incredible speeds and maneuvers impossible for conventional aircraft. It is believed that these aircraft used anti-gravity technologies based on information obtained from supposed extraterrestrial contacts. Reports of flying disc sightings in Nazi Germany fueled speculation about the existence of these advanced technologies. In addition to aircraft, there are reports that the Nazis were interested in dimensional portals and interplanetary travel. Secret projects such as the supposed Die Glocke, the Bell, involved mysterious technologies that some believe were attempts to manipulate spacetime. These stories, though unconfirmed, continue to fuel theories about the extent of Nazi involvement with the occult and the unknown. Die Glocke was described as a bell-shaped device, built with exotic materials and capable of generating powerful electromagnetic fields. It is believed that experiments with Die Glocke involved creating gravitational fields and manipulating time, potentially allowing travel through dimensions or even contact with other civilizations. The details of these experiments remain shrouded in mystery, but the legends persist as part of the Nazi occult legacy. To strengthen the evidence, it is important to cite historical documents and post-war testimonies that mention these projects. For example, reports from Allied military personnel who investigated Nazi laboratories and facilities after the war mention the existence of unusual aircraft projects and advanced scientific experiments. Testimonies from scientists and engineers who worked on these projects also provide a more solid basis for the claims of advanced technologies developed based on esoteric communications. Reports of contacts with extraterrestrial entities range from visions and apparitions to direct messages received during channeling session. Some theories suggest that the Nazis received detailed instructions on building advanced technologies and implementing military strategies. These messages supposedly came from highly developed civilizations interested in influencing events on Earth. The channeling sessions involved mediums and sensitives who claimed to be able to communicate with extraterrestrial beings. The Nazis believed that these communications could provide invaluable knowledge that would guarantee their victory in the war. The search for extraterrestrial contacts also reflected the Nazi desire to transcend human limitations and reach a higher level of existence. The idea that cosmic forces could be manipulated to serve earthly goals was a logical extension of the regime's esoteric mentality, which saw occultism as a tool to shape humanity's destiny. This desire to control and utilize powers beyond our world is one of the most intriguing and disturbing facets of Nazi occultism. Have you ever wondered how the horrors of war affected the minds of Nazi soldiers? The involvement in atrocities, esoteric rituals, and macabre experiments did not only affect the victims, but also left deep marks on the psyche of the Nazi soldiers themselves. Many of these soldiers who were witnesses and participants in these inhumane actions suffered severe psychological consequences. The brutality of the Nazi regime demanded blind obedience, but the reality of these actions often clashed with any remaining sense of morality or humanity in individuals. Many Nazi soldiers were forced to participate in mass executions, inhumane experiments, and other acts of extreme violence. This compulsory participation generated immense psychological stress, resulting in crises of conscience, nightmares, and deep trauma. Although Nazi propaganda attempted to dehumanize the victims and justify acts of violence, many soldiers could not suppress their natural reactions of empathy and repulsion. There are reports of soldiers openly weeping after executions, unable to cope with the guilt and horror of what they had done. Some tried to numb their feelings through alcohol and drugs, seeking to escape the disturbing memories. In some cases, soldiers deserted or committed suicide, unable to continue bearing the weight of the atrocities they were involved in. The SS, aware of the psychological impact of these actions, implemented rigorous training and indoctrination sessions to emotionally harden the soldiers. However, emotional repression and systematic brutalization often resulted in irreversible psychological damage. The Nazi regime also employed psychologists and psychiatrists to attempt to treat soldiers who showed signs of weakness or moral distress. These professionals often used coercive and unethical methods, trying to recalibrate the soldiers' minds to accept violence as a patriotic necessity. Therapies included everything from hypnosis and sensory deprivation to more brutal techniques of mental reconditioning. The psychological effects of Nazi atrocities were not limited to the wartime period. Many soldiers who survived the conflict carried trauma and guilt for the rest of their lives. After the war, many struggled to reintegrate into society, haunted by the memories of the actions they committed or witnessed. Some became reclusive, unable to share their experiences with family or friends, while others sought support in veteran groups that shared the same psychological scars. Modern psychology recognizes that many of these soldiers likely suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, a condition that only began to be widely studied and understood decades after the war ended. The lack of support and understanding at the time aggravated the suffering of the veterans, many of whom lived in silence with their internal pain. The psychological scars of these soldiers are a testament to the brutality of the Nazi regime and the depth of dehumanization it imposed. The way these men were forced to confront and often suppress their own humanity highlights the devastating human cost of an ideology that glorified violence and cruelty. The stories of these soldiers, often forgotten or marginalized, are essential for a complete understanding of the psychological impact of Nazism. Have you ever thought about the legacy that Nazi occultism left for the world? Even after the fall of the Third Reich, the hidden legacy of World War II continues to intrigue historians, researchers, and esotericism enthusiasts. Many of the knowledge and technologies developed during this period were incorporated by other world powers, particularly through Operation Paperclip, in which Nazi scientists were brought to the United States. Operation Paperclip not only brought scientific advancements, but also introduced elements of Nazi esoteric ideology to the West. Scientists like Wernher von Braun, who worked on the V-2 missile projects, significantly contributed to the US space program. The personal history of these scientists and their connections to occult practices remain a dark and often forgotten chapter of history. Von Braun and other Nazi scientists transferred to the United States were instrumental in the development of aerospace technologies, including the Apollo program that landed a man on the moon. However, the influence of their beliefs and esoteric practices on new technologies and scientific research is a less explored aspect. The integration of these scientists into US defense and space programs raises questions about the transfer of ideologies and occult knowledges. Beyond scientific contributions, the psychological and spiritual impact of the horrors experienced during the war left deep scars on humanity. The esoteric practices and inhumane experiments of the Nazis serve as a grim reminder of the extremes to which the pursuit of power can lead. The memory of concentration camps and Nazi occult rituals continues to be a warning about the dangers of fanaticism and dehumanization. The survivors of concentration camps carry profound traumas, and their stories serve as a testament to human suffering and cruelty. Studying these events is essential to ensure that the lessons of history are not forgotten, and that such atrocities are never repeated. The spiritual legacy of World War II is a constant reminder of the need for compassion, understanding, and vigilance against hatred and intolerance. Nazi esoteric studies also influenced post-war occultist movements. Neo-Nazi groups and other extremist organizations often incorporate Nazi symbols and ideologies into their practices, perpetuating the dark legacy of World War II. These practices continue to fuel conspiracy theories and public fascination with the occult side of the Nazi regime. Contemporary esoteric movements, such as the New Age and some neo-pagan groups, have also been influenced by Nazi esoteric ideas. The appropriation of Nazi symbols and rituals by these groups creates a disturbing connection to the past, highlighting the need for a critical and informed understanding of historical influences on modern occultism. The ongoing interest in Nazi occultism inspires new research and academic studies. Historians and esotericists investigate documents, testimonies, and artifacts in the hope of better understanding the motivations and occult practices of the Nazis. This field of study is essential for unraveling the mysteries and truths behind the legends, providing a more complete view of the impact of occultism on World War II. These studies also help demystify and contextualize the hidden legacy of the Nazis, separating fact from fiction and providing a solid foundation for historical understanding. By investigating these practices, scholars contribute to the preservation of historical memory and the education of future generations about the dangers of fanaticism and extremism. Occultism, in World War II, reveals a hidden and disturbing side of history. The esoteric practices, macabre rituals, and quest for communication with extraterrestrial entities show how far the thirst for power can take humanity. By exploring these dark secrets, we are reminded of the importance of understanding and reflecting on our past to prevent such atrocities from happening again. If you are interested in exploring more about spirituality, check out our video on the true origin of Adam and Eve. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of self-discovery and spiritual learning. Your commitment to knowledge is the first step to transforming your reality.